Alright, so for this chapter project, we're going to be building a PHP MySQL quiz. Alright, so it's going to be pretty simple. Basically, it's going to pull questions from a database, and it's going to pull the choices for each question from a database, and it'll include the right and wrong choices, and we'll code the logic behind the score, and which one's right, which ones are wrong, and things like that. So it's not going to have a big admin page with CRUD with create, read, and update and delete, but we will have a very simple form where we can add questions to the database through the browser, all right, as opposed to just manually sticking them in the database. All right, so what we're going to do first is create our database. Now, if you've been following along, then you have XAMPP installed, and as long as your server is running, you should be able to go to localhost/phpMyAdmin and click on databases, and we're just going to create a new database here called Quizzer. Okay, so that's just the fake name that I've given to this application. And we're going to have two tables here. We're going to have a questions table and a choices table. Okay, so let's create questions. And this is only going to have two columns. Now, we're going to have a primary key for the first field here. So I'm going to go to index, primary. I'm not going to choose auto increment, which is kind of different than what we usually do. Most of the time you'll have an ID for the primary key, and it'll auto increment, and the ID will increase after each entry is entered. Alright, but in this case, we want each question to be bound by a question number. Okay, so question 2 should always be question 2. And if we were to do auto increment and then delete a question, things would get all messed up. So this isn't going to be auto increment. Alright, so, and I'm not even going to call it ID, I'm going to call it question number. And it's going to be an int. We'll give it 11 for maximum length. And then the next field is just going to be the text of the question, which will be text. Okay, so very, very simple table. Save that. Alright, so now we want to create the choices table, which will have 4 columns. Okay, so we'll have an ID, and this will have an auto increment. It'll be the primary key. We'll put 11 here. Okay, so the next field is going to be a foreign key for the questions table, and this is going to be question number. Okay, so this here is how we're going to connect the question to its choices. Okay, this will be an int as well, 11. Okay, the next one is going to be basically a true-false value. So we're going to call this is correct, just so we know which choice is correct. And this is going to be a tiny int and only have 1 character. Okay, we also want to set a default for this. Okay, so each question will have about 3 or 4 incorrect answers and 1 correct answer. So I figured that we should put 0 or no for the default. Alright, and then if it is correct, that'll have a 1. Alright, and then the last field here is going to be just the text for the choice. Okay, we'll choose text. And that's it. That's it for our database. Very simple. Really nice for an early project. Alright, so let's put this aside for now. And go to our htdocs folder, and we're going to create a new project folder called Quizzer. Okay, so like always, what I like to do first is the UI, is the user interface and all the display elements. So let's create our files. Do an index. Actually, we want to do index.php. And let's have a CSS folder. Now, the structure of this application isn't going to be, it's not going to be complicated. We're just going to just throw all our files in here. As we go on with our projects, the structure will get more complicated and be more semantic. So I'm going to go ahead and open up index PHP. I'm just going to use Notepad for this project. Alright, so let's just paste in, we're not going to use any frameworks or anything, or any complicated design. It's just going to be very simple, very plain, very clean. Alright, so let's just indent this a little here. Okay, so we'll give it a title, call it PHP Quizzer. Alright, so in the body, actually let's link our CSS file. So CSS, and we're going to call it style.css. Okay, let's create that file. Whoop, I created a folder. Let's open that up with Notepad++. Alright, so now we have our style sheet linked. First thing I want to do here is create a header. I'm going to use the HTML5 element here. Alright, and then we're going to use a div. We're going to use a container class. Basically, the container class is going to push everything in the middle and give it a fixed width. Alright, and inside of here I just want an H1 tag. I'm going to call it PHP Quizzer. Alright, so that'll give us our header. Next we're going to have the main area, so we'll use the HTML5 main tag. And we want a container here as well. Alright, let's see, H2. Alright, let's go down here and create the footer. And in the footer, we'll have a container. And inside the container, we're just going to have a copyright. Fake copyright, of course. Not OHO, PHP. Alright, so let's just open that up. So we can go to localhost/Quizzer. Alright, so here it is so far. Doesn't look very good. Let's add a little bit of style to this. So in our style sheet, let's start with the body. And I'm going to give this a font family of Arial. And then font size will be a little bigger than usual, 15 pixels, and then we'll give it a line height of 1.6M, and that should be good for the body. Okay, so list items, I always take off the bullet, list style none, and also links, I hate the underline, I always get rid of the underline, so text, decoration is going to be none. Alright, let's see what else. The container. So basically the container is going to have a width. I want this to be responsive because I want this to look good and run on mobile devices. So I'm going to give it a width of 60% instead of a fixed width. Margin, we want it all to be pushed to the middle, so we're going to do margin 0 on the top and bottom, and then auto on the left and right. And then finally we'll add an overflow of auto. And that's good for the container. Let's see, the header. Header, I'm going to give a border on the bottom of 3 pixels. We'll make it light gray. And solid. And then the footer, give it a border on the top. Basically the same thing as the header. And then for the main, which is basically the main body, we're going to have, I just want to add a padding to the bottom of 20 pixels. Alright, let's see if that changed at all. Alright, so that's looking better. For the footer, let's align that to the center. And we'll put a little margin on the top as well. I'm sorry, a padding. Whoop. Okay. And by the way, the index page is basically just going to be an intro for the quiz, and then we'll have a start button, which will go to the actual quiz page. Okay, so let's add a few more things here. Inside of the main area, under the H2 tag, let's add a paragraph. Okay, so I'm going to say this is a multiple choice quiz to test your knowledge of PHP. Okay, and then we're going to have a list underneath. Okay, so we're just going to have some information here. First one being the number of questions, which I'm going to put in a strong tag. Okay, and we're going to put here 5. Now this is going to change in the future. I'm going to have it generate dynamically from the database. Basically, it'll count the number of questions and output it here. Alright, let me just copy this. Okay, the next one is going to be just the type of quiz, and that's just going to be static text called multiple choice. Alright, and then the estimated time of the test. And this, I'm actually going to take the number of questions and divide them so that it's about 30 seconds per question. But for right now, let's just say 4 minutes. And then finally, we want to have a link to start the quiz. Okay, this is going to go to questions or question.php. Give it a class so we can style it. Alright, now we want to go to question.php, but we want to make sure that we go to the first question. So we're going to have a get variable here called n, and that's going to stand for number. Okay, so it's going to say n equals 1. So we know that we're at question number 1. Okay, so let's save that. Alright, looks good. Obviously, if we start, nothing comes up because we don't have this question.php page yet. Let's just style this button a little bit. Okay, so let's go down here, and there's a link with the class of start. And let's start by setting it to inline block. And the color will be dark gray. And then the background will be a light gray. Border, we'll say 1 pixels dotted, and that should be kind of a light gray. And then finally padding 6 and 13. Alright, so that looks a lot better. Alright, so our index interface is complete. So next we want to build the question.php file. Okay, so we'll open this up, and basically I'm going to copy everything from the index page because we want the same layout. Alright, so let's get rid of pretty much everything in the body from within the container. Get rid of that. Now I want to have some text that tells us the question we're on. Okay, so I'm going to create a div with the class of current. Okay, and in this current div, we're basically going to say question, we'll say question 1 of 5, and this will be dynamically generated as well. But just for now, we'll just do that. Alright, so under that, we're going to have a paragraph, and this is going to have a class of question. Okay, and then inside of there, we're going to have our text. For now, I'm just going to add static text. So I'm going to just paste in a question. What does PHP stand for? Alright, and then underneath the paragraph, we're going to start the form. And the form is going to be post. Okay, method equals post. And then for the action, basically the page that we want to send the form to is going to be called process.php. Alright, so that should be good. Alright, so what we want here is an unordered list for our multiple choice. The unordered list is going to have a class of choices. Alright, and in here we're going to have an input name is going to be choice, and then the type, what did I do here? The type is going to be radio, Let's see what else. Value. The value is going to be equal to the ID of the ID of the question. So I'm just going to put in 1 for now. And that's good for the input. And then I'm just going to paste in the text question. Alright, so let's just copy this. Alright, and I'm just going to change up the answers a little bit here, just for display. Private home page, personal home page, and just change this to personal hypertext preprocessor. Alright, so let's check this out. So we want to go, let's click start, brings us to question.php. Okay, so that's good. We do obviously need a button. Alright, so let's go back and right under the UL closing tag, let's add a button. Input type is going to be submit, and then the value we'll say submit, and that's good. Okay, I want to give a little style to this question 1 of 5, so let's go back here, and current, I'm just going to paste this in because we're running out of time. Okay, so basically gave it some padding, gave it a background. Alright, so that looks better. So I'm going to stop here, and then in the next video we'll continue with the user interface, and then we'll move on to the actual PHP coding. Alright, so we have our home page and our question page UI complete. There's just a few more pages we need to create. So if we go to our structure, we might as well get those out of the way now. So we'll create these, and I'll explain what each one does. Okay, so we're going to have a final.php, and this is just going to be the view where you complete the test and it tells you congratulations, it tells you your score, things like that. Alright, okay, so the next one we're going to create is going to be called process.php, and this basically won't have a view. It's just going to process our answer and add it to the score variable. There's no view. It'll just do a redirect to either the next question or the final page. Alright, so next we need another PHP file called database.php, and this is going to be our database connection file. Alright, now this structure here isn't very complex. If you're building a bigger app, a bigger production application, you want to kind of categorize each file and put them in subfolders, and we'll look into that later on, especially in the blog project. We'll have a big structure with classes, and we'll be doing more object-oriented stuff. So the last one I want to create here is basically our admin page called add.php, and it's just going to be a form where we can actually add quizzes to the database through the browser. Alright, so let's start here with final. Okay, so I'm going to copy the markup from the question page. Also, when you get into bigger apps and more advanced stuff, you don't want to have this doc type and all the head stuff in every page like we're doing. You can see how every page has that. What you want to do generally is create maybe a file called header.php and then put the header in there and then just include it in each page. And we're going to get into that. I just wanted this first project to be really simple. Alright, so let's go ahead and get rid of the main content within the container. Okay, so in the container I'm going to add an H2, and we're just going to say you're done, and then let's have a couple paragraph. We'll say congrats, you have completed the test. And then we'll have our final score. For now, we'll just say 5. And then I also want a link to retake it. So that'll go to question.php, and it'll go to number 1. Class start. Alright, so let's take a look at the final page. Okay, so that's what the final page will look like. Very simple. So now we want to do the add page. Okay, so actually let's just copy the index page. Alright, so we're going to have a form here. Let's add a header. Okay, and we're going to open a form tag. So form method is going to be post. Action is actually going to be this page. So add.php. Okay, so inside of the form, we'll have a paragraph and a label. So this will be the question number field. We're going to let the user define the question numbers. That way they can actually edit the order and things like that. Okay, so we're going to have an input type. We're going to use the HTML5 number attribute. And then the name we'll say is question number. And then that's it for now. Okay. And since it's the number field, we can use the arrow as well, which is nice. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this. And the next one is going to be question text. Okay, so the type is going to be text. And this will be text. Alright, so let's copy this. Okay, next we're going to have choice number 1. Let's put semicolon, put colons here. So choice 1 is going to be text, and the name is going to be choice 1. Alright, and we're going to have 5 of these choices. 2, 3, 'and this will be what? 1, 2, 3, okay, 4, and this will be 5. Alright, so that's all the choices. And then we're going to have one more input field, and that's going to be called correct choice number. Okay, so they're going to enter the number, whichever one of these is correct, they're going to enter that number. So we're going to change this to a number type, and we're going to call this correct choice. Okay, and then of course we want a submit button. Submit, and then we'll give it a value of submit. Alright, so let's check out the form. Alright, so it looks a little messed up. Actually, the submit, we have to put, the type should be button. I'm sorry, submit. Alright, so let's edit this a little bit with CSS. I want the label, no matter how long, I want the input boxes to start at the same point. So what we need to do is make these labels an inline block in our CSS file. Okay, so I'll just go up here and say label display inline block, and let's give it a width of 180 pixels. Alright, that looks a lot better. I want to style these input boxes a little bit. I want to make all of them longer, all the text boxes longer, and the numbers, question number and correct choice number, I want to make a little shorter. Okay, so in our CSS, we'll say input. Okay, so we'll use this CSS3 selector. Alright, so we can say type equals text. So this will apply only to inputs with the type of text. Alright, so let's say width 97% of its container. We'll put some padding, border, radius, we'll make 5 pixels, and of course we need a border, 1 pixel. Alright. Okay, so there's our text. Now for the number, let me copy this. Okay, so the width for the number, let's just do a fixed, we'll do 50 pixels. Padding, everything else is good. Alright. So that'll do it for our form. Now as far as being responsive, alright, so what I want to do is I want to add a media query, so when the window is smaller, I want less space on the sides. Alright, so let's go ahead and add just a simple media query at the bottom here. Say media only screen, and max width, we'll say 960, so anything under 960. we're going to set the width. I'm sorry, we're going to set the container with a width of 80%. Alright, so let's try that. Alright, there we go. That looks really good. So this is a fine mobile app. If you could actually add on to this and then create a mobile app, that would be pretty cool. So that's good for now. That's the user interface. In the next video, we'll get into adding our PHP code and interacting with the database. Alright, so now that our UI is done, we want to get into creating the logic and the PHP and the code to connect to our database. Alright, so in this chapter, we're going to start off with creating our database file, which will hold our connection parameters and will connect through the MySQL API. Alright, so there's a bunch of different ways you can interact with your database. The original API was the MySQL API, which is now deprecated and not really safe. So you want to use MySQL or something like PDO for interacting with your database. And what we're going to do, I'm not going to say is best practice, but I just want to just make it understandable for the people that are kind of just starting out with this stuff. So let's do that. We want to open up database.php. You know what, let me associate these files with Notepad. Alright, so PHP, we want to open our tags. Whoop, I don't know where that came from. Alright, now, for the most part, I don't add a closing tag when I'm done. You don't have to. It's in some cases it's recommended that you don't, just to keep from messing with other files. I'm not sure the exact reason, but I very rarely close it if it's the end of the file. Obviously, if we're still putting HTML, we'll close it, but most of the time I won't if it's the end of the file. So the first thing we're going to do here is create connection credentials. Okay, so we're going to say db host. Now, I'm kind of assuming that most of you know at least the basics of PHP, how to assign a variable, how to call a function, things like that. But I will try to explain as I go. Alright, so I'm going to create a couple variables here to hold the database user, the host, the password, things like that. In PHP, your variables need to start with a $sign. This double slash here, this is a comment. Alright, so I realize that a lot of you probably already know that, but some people may not. Alright, so the host is going to be called localhost, and this is true 99% of the time when working on a server, even XAMPP or WAMP or something like that. Alright, so the next one is going to be the database name. Now, if you remember in the first, I believe it was the first video, oh, these have to end with semicolons as well. I created a database called Quizzer, so that's what I'm going to use here. Okay, next is the user, and the user is root, and then we have the password, and this is where you're going to put your password. I just have something really simple. I think that was it. Alright, so that's our parameters or our variables. Next we want to create the MySQL object. Okay, so we're going to use, when dealing with MySQL you can use the procedural way or the object-oriented way. All right. For instance, if you're using procedural, you would assign your variable to whatever MySQLi, and to call a function, let's say the connect error function, it would be underscore something like that, MySQLi underscore error. When using the object-oriented version, you use your object variable, and then like this, you need the arrow to call error. And this is the version we're going to use. We're not going to be using a lot of object-oriented styles in this particular application, but we will later on down the line. We'll actually create classes and things like that. Alright, so we want to create this object. MySQLi is going to be equal to new MySQLi, and then we simply want to pass in our credentials. So db host, and then we want db user and db pass and db name, and this should all go in this order. Alright, and then basically I'm just going to create a simple error handler. So we'll say if MySQLi connect error, then we want to print out printf connect failed, and then we're going to use these placeholders, this %s, alright, and then I'm going to do this /n for a new line. And then let's see, the next one we'll say MySQLi connect error, and then we just want to exit. So basically, if it doesn't connect, it's going to spit out this error, which will have the actual error code right here. So that's going to be our entire database file. So we just want to make sure we save that. And we're going to have to include this on every page that we want to use the database. Alright, so an include is really easy. Let's just go to our index. Okay, so before any of the HTML output, I'm going to say PHP include database.php, and that should include the file. Okay, so let's save that and go to the index page. Okay, so we have no errors, so that means that it connected. Now if we go back into database, and let's just change this database name to, we'll just add in a letter, so this database is not valid, it's not there, so we should get an error. So let's save this and reload, and now we get this unknown database message. Okay, so this output here is coming from this right here, this object, or this property, connect error. Alright, so we can see that we are connected. Let's just change this back to what it should be. So we're connected to the database, and we're now ready to start running queries. Alright, so the UI is done. We're connected to the database. What we want to do now is I want to pull the questions and choices from the database. But right now we don't have any questions or choices in there. So we can easily insert questions and choices through PHPMyAdmin. Alright, so let's click on questions. We gotta log in again. So questions, and then click on insert. Alright, so I'm just going to grab a few questions. I'm going to use the W3 Schools PHP quiz. Alright, and this is actually the question that I used. So I'm going to copy that. And we'll just add that here. Okay, so the question number, I want this to be question 1, and then question 2. The answer here is this anyways. Okay, so actually I don't want this question, too many confusing characters. Okay, this is a good one. Copy this question. Alright, so we get 2 questions right here. Okay, so now we want to add our choices. Insert. And let's do 5 rows. So question number 1, the first choice is this, which is the correct choice. Since this is the correct choice, we want to change this to a 1. This is correct. Whoop. Alright. Okay, next one. You want to make sure these ignores are unchecked or it won't go through. Okay, so next, question number 1. Question number 1, it's going to be 0. Let's see. Get this. Question number 1 again. Personal home page. Okay, let's get the last one. That's question 1. And let's submit that. Incorrect integer. Oh, we submitted an empty one, so we can just delete that. Alright, so now we have all our choices for question number 1. Okay, and we can see that the correct answer is marked 1 for is correct. So let's add in the choices for question number 2. Change this to 5. Alright, so up at the top we want question number 2. Let's look at the answers here. Okay, choice 1 looks like the correct one too. Okay, so we'll say 1. That's the correct answer. Okay, question 2. Whoop. Question 2 again. Looks like there's only 3 choices for this one. And that's absolutely fine. The way we're building this application, it doesn't matter how many choices you have. You can do a true-false if you want. Alright. So let's click on Go. Okay, so now we have all of our choices. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to spit that out in this page, okay? And we're going to pay attention to this n equals 1 because this is going to be the number of the question. So let's go to question.php. And we want to include the database because we haven't done that yet. So let's just grab what we did on the index page. Alright, now what we want to do is open up another PHP block here to work in. And this is where we're going to do all of our queries and all of our PHP logic. when working on a production app, something bigger than this, you usually would want to have a separate page for your queries, or follow a framework like the Model View Controller framework. But this is just going to be a very simple, very minimal project, so we're just going to do it up here. Alright, so what we want to do first is we want to get the number of the question. So this is question 1. So how do we get this? We get this using a super global called get. Alright, so let's see, set question number. So we want, what is that? I didn't want that. We're going to create a variable called number, and like I said, the way that we get that value in the URL is through the get superglobal. So we can use this, and what we want to put in there is whatever we have right here, which is n. Okay, so put that here, n, and that's going to make this number accessible to us, and we can actually use it inside of our queries. Okay, so that's good, and let's actually typecast this to be an integer. So we can do that just with parentheses and the word int. Alright, so let's see, we want to run our first query. I like to kind of use this convention here. So we want to get the question. And the first thing we're going to do is create a query. Okay, so if you know MySQL, that's great. Even if you know just a little bit, because we're not doing any complex queries here. We're going to do a simple select here. So we want to say select all. We use the asterisk for all, and then from, and then the name of the table, which I put in these little backticks. Okay, the name of the table is questions. So this is a query, select all from questions. If we ran that, we would get everything that we have inside of the questions table, okay, which is our 2 questions. Alright, but we don't want to get both questions because this is just a 1 question page. So we want to say select all from questions where the question number equals this, okay, which we set into this variable. Alright, so after from questions, I'm just going to go to a new line here, and we're going to say where question number is equal to number. Alright, so that number is coming from here. Now, all we did here was put the query into a variable. We haven't ran anything yet. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is we want to get the results from this query. So we can do that. Let's create a variable called result, and we're going to equal that to MySQL query. Okay, so this is the method that actually runs our query, which we got to pass in. Okay, and we're going to say run the query or die, which is just going to cut the script down, cut it out. Alright, and then inside here we're going to pass in the error, MySQL error, and then the line number. So that'll give us an informative error if something goes wrong. Now, the last thing we want to do is assign a variable that we can use. Okay, so I'm going to create a variable called question, and I'm going to set that to result, and then fetch underscore assoc, and that's gonna give us an associative array with our data that we requested, and we can use that down here. Alright, so from the questions table we want the questions text. Alright, and we want to replace this static text with the dynamic text from the database. Okay, so let me just get rid of that. and we just want to put in some PHP tags, and we want to echo out question, and then in here we want to pass in text. Okay, so this text is coming from the database right here. Okay, so we want the text for the first question. Okay, so let's save that. Now it shouldn't change. Okay, it shouldn't change, but this is actually now coming from the database, and to prove that, let's just go in here and let's just rearrange the question. We'll say PHP stands for what? Okay, so now if we go back and reload, PHP stands for what? So it's now coming from the database. Alright, so for the choices, now the choices aren't coming from the questions table, they're coming from the choices table, so we have to do a separate query for that. Okay, so back to our question.php file. I'm actually going to copy this. Now this is going to be a little different because the question that we pulled, we had an ID for, so we only got one record of that one question. With this, we have to get all the choices for one question. So we're going to be getting multiple values. So we're going to have to assign it to a variable like we did, but we're going to have to loop over it and then spit out each iteration or each choice. Alright, so we're going to say select all from not questions but choices. Alright, and we're going to say where question number equals number. We're going to keep that there because remember, choices has a question number field. Okay, so if we go ahead and look at that, you can see that our choices table has this question number. So we only want the choices for question number 1. So it should get all of these. Alright, so that query is done. Now we want to get the results. Alright, so we're actually we're not going to use this here. Okay, but we're going to say results. No, actually I'm not even going to say results. I'm going to change this to choices. Alright, and then same thing, we're passing in this query. Alright, and then what we need to do is go through a loop down here. Okay, so what we want to do is spit it out here. So we'll say PHP. We're going to use a while loop. So we're going to say while row equals choices fetch assoc. Now we saw that already, but we had it up top because we were just getting one record. Here we need to scroll through multiple records. Alright, so while that, now instead of using curly braces, I'm going to use a colon because I want to end the line, the PHP line. Okay, and then down here we can simply say end while, and that ends the while loop. Okay, so while there's still records, that's basically what this is saying. We're saying while there's still choice records for this query, then we want to, I'm just going to copy one of these because we only need one, because it's going to iterate 4 times or however many choices there are. And I can actually delete all these. Alright, now what I want to do here is change these to dynamic values. Okay, we'll start with the text. So what we did, we're saying while row equals choices fetch associative array, so we can use this row variable. Okay, so in here we're going to say PHP echo row. Okay, so this is an associative array. And what I want is the text. Okay, so we have this text field. So that's what I'm going to put in here, text. Now the value I also want, I want to be dynamic, but I want it to be the ID. Okay, so the ID of the choice is what I want. So all we have to do here is say echo row and then ID. Actually, wait a minute. Alright. So now our value and the text are going to be dynamic. Okay, so let's save this and hope that it works. Okay, so we have an unexpected slash question line 46. Oh, I didn't end the PHP block right here. I need a semicolon and then end it. Alright, so now the question itself and the choices are coming from the database. So now that we have that done, that's going to submit to process.php, which we'll do in the next video because there's quite a bit of logic we have to do there as far as processing and redirecting. Alright, but the last thing I want to do in this video is change index. For the index file, I want the number of questions and the minutes, I want that to be dynamic so that we don't have to hard code that into the HTML. Okay, so we'll go to the index page and we're just going to do a little bit of PHP up here. Alright, so let's go ahead and what we want to do is get the total number of questions. Actually, this should be. I don't really use Notepad++ for PHP. I use Eclipse, which has a better hints, code hints, and things like that. I think in the next project we will install Eclipse or another IDE that is good for working with PHP. Alright, so what do I want to do here? I want a query just like we've been doing. And it's going to be really simple. We're just going to select all from questions. Alright, and then what I want to do is get results. Actually, set this to results. Results equals, and I can just copy from here. Okay, so basically we created the query, then we're running it here and assigning it to results. Now what we can do is we can use this results object to get the number of rows that it found. So we'll say total equals results num rows. Alright, so that'll give us the total. Now that we have that total, the number of questions, we can go down here and change this 5 PHP echo echo total. Okay, so let's go ahead and reload, and now you can see that it's changed to 2 because we have two questions in our database. And as far as the minutes, I just want to change this to echo total times 0.5. Alright, and that'll give us the minutes, just an estimation. Okay, so 1 minute. So I'm basically saying that one question takes 30 seconds. All right, and you can change that. You can change that logic to whatever you'd like. All right, so looks good. In the next video, we will actually we'll create the functionality to process each question and redirect us to the next question. Alright, so what we're going to do in this video is actually process the user's answer. We want to check if the answer that they submit is the right one, and if it is, we want to add it to our score. Now, the score is going to be held in a PHP session. Alright, so a session is basically, you can look at it as a global variable. You can use it on any page, anywhere in the script. Alright, so we're just going to create one session variable called score, and we'll just add to it as the user gets correct answers. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up process.php. Alright, so the first thing we want to do here is include the database file. Alright. So, like I said, we're going to have a session variable. So, in order to do that, we need to start a session. Alright, so at the top here, we need to say session_start. And this has to go on every page where you're going to use the session variable. Alright, so basically it's going to go at the top of every page along with this database include. Alright, so now what we're going to do here is we're going to first check for the score. Check to see if score is set. Alright, and we're going to do that with an if statement. And basically we're going to say if it's not set. Alright, so this is set is a PHP function to see if some value is set. Alright, but we're going to check and see if it's not set, and that's what this exclamation mark does. It makes it the opposite. Alright, so we're going to see if that session variable, okay, now session is a super global, just like post and get, so we can use it like this. Alright, and the variable name will be score. Okay, so if score is not set, then what do we want to do? We want to set score. So session score is going to be equal to 0, because if it's not there, if the score session variable is not there, then we want to create it, but we want to set it to 0. And then as the user goes on and gets correct answers, it'll be added to that super global. Next, what we need to do is we need to get the answer. Okay, so when the user answers the first question, or any question for that matter, it gets submitted to this file, and it gets submitted with the post super global array. Okay, so we need to check for that. We need to see if post was submitted. All right, so we'll say if post, and we're going to check for the submit button, because obviously if the submit button has been clicked, then we want to process. All right, so actually we're going to say if is set post submit. Alright, now we can just do a simple test here. Let's say echo I've been submitted. Alright, so let's go ahead and go to our question. We'll reload this. If is set post submit. Actually, you know what? Let's just say if post. Alright. So this tells us the post has been submitted. If we just go to process.php without post, then it does nothing. Alright, so we want to make sure that it's being submitted. So we want to get two things really. We want to get the question number and we want to get the selected choice. Alright, and the question number is up here in the URL. So what I want to do is I want to pass it through post, not through get, not through the URL. So all we need to do is go to the form, the question form, and create a hidden input. Alright, so right under the submit input, I'm just going to say input type equals hidden, and the name is going to be number. Okay, and then the value is going to be number right here. Okay, because we're putting the get variable into the number variable, so I want to pass that down here. Alright, so let's make sure that these go through. Number we're going to set to post number, and then say selected choice post, I think it's choice. Alright, so these keys right here are coming from the name attribute on the question form. So you can see the choice input has a name of choice, and then the number input has a name of number. So that's where we're getting these values right here. Alright, now I just want to make sure that these go through. So we're going to echo number, and we'll just put in a line break here so we can read it. And echo selected choice. Alright. Undefined index number. Input type hidden number. Undefined index number. You know what, let's just look at the post array. We can do a print R, and that's going to print out all the values of the array. Oh, you know what, I don't think I reloaded this page before I submitted it. Yeah, because you see we're getting both here. So let me try that again. Alright, good. So we're getting number 1, question number 1, and we selected the choice 2. You see if I select this one, it's 4. So we're grabbing the whatever the user submits. So that's good. So we can get rid of that. Another value that I want to have is the next number, because once that we go through and we check the answer, we want to redirect the user to the next question, so it'll look like this, the next question. So let's create another variable, and I'm just going to call it next, and we're just going to set it to number plus 1. Alright, so now we want to run another query. We want to get the correct answer for this question. Okay, so let's just put in a little bit of information here. Alright, so we're going to get correct choice. So query So we want to say select all from choices. By the way, these are not quotes. These are the little back ticks. The key is located right above the tab. You don't need shift, just the key above the tab. I know some people might get confused and think that those are actually single quotes, but they're not. Alright, so select all from choices where question number equals number and is correct equals 1. Alright, so if we go and look at our database, okay, so we're looking in the choices table, we're looking for the question with the current number, which is 1 for us. So we're getting, just from that query alone, we're getting these 4 answers because they all have the question number of 1. But we're also saying where is correct is equal to 1, and you can see that only one of those is equal to 1. Alright, so that's the correct answer. That's what it should grab for us. Alright, so now we need to run the query and put it into a result variable. Alright, so we're going to say result equals query, and we're going to say or die, and inside here we just want to shoot off the error and the line. Alright, so that should do. Now we want to get that row. Result, fetch assoc. Alright, so now we're going to just set the correct choice. Correct choice is going to equal row, and we want the ID. Alright, so now we have the correct answer in this variable, so we can actually do a comparison. So we'll have a simple if statement. So we're going to say if correct choice is equal to the selected choice, then they have the right answer. So we're just going to add to that session variable. So session score, and we're going to increment it by 1. You can say session score plus 1 or plus plus. Alright. So actually I'm going to change this up here to plus plus as well, just to be consistent. So we're not going to have an else here, because basically if it's correct, then we're just going to add to the score. If it's not, then it's not going to add to the score. So very simple. So the last thing I want to do in this process file is check and see if it's the last question. Because if it's the last question, we don't want to go to the next question. We want to go to our final page. Okay, so we'll set up an if-else statement. Okay, so we're going to say if number is equal to total. Now we don't have this variable total yet. We're going to have to get that. We'll do that after. So if the number is equal to the total, so basically if there's 5 questions and you're on number 5, you know that that's the last page. And if it is, then we want to redirect. Okay, so we're going to use the header function and do just a simple redirect in PHP to final.php. And then we just want to make sure we exit. Alright, and if it's not the last question, we want to redirect to the next question. So header, location. Okay, so the location is going to be our question page, question.php, and then the number is going to equal the next value. Alright, see how that works? Alright, so let's just write a quick query up here and get the total. Now, doing what I'm doing here, I think I've mentioned this before, but doing queries right in the page like this, it's not the best practice. Well, this actually isn't a display page, but on a page like question, where we're putting the queries up here, I mean, it's not the best practice, but I just wanted this to be a really easy project just to get you comfortable with making queries. In future projects, we'll create a database class, and we'll just use that as kind of an abstraction layer to communicate with the database. So this basically is just for simplicity, really. Alright, so get total. First we want to create our query. Select all from questions. And that's it, really. Select all. And then I'm going to get results. Results. Let's see, what do we do with the query? Alright, so total is going to be equal to results. I can't type today. Results, and then num rows. Alright, so that should give us the total. Alright, so let's give this a shot. Now, we don't have our final page done yet, so I just want to make sure that it's going to pass us to the next question like it's supposed to. Alright, so we'll start the quiz. Question 1 of 5. Do we have 5? We don't have 5 questions, do we? Oh, I didn't make that dynamic yet, did I? Let's actually go to the index page real quick. Total. Wait a minute, we did do that. Number of questions. Oh. Yeah, we want to put the number here as well in the question.php file. Because, look, we just have question 1 of 5. So we want to get a couple things here. Looks like in the question variable we have the, we can get the ID. I'm sorry, the question number. So we'll say PHP echo question number. And then the total, did we do that here? Alright, so let's just grab that total code that we just wrote right here. And then down here we can just say question number of total. Okay, so let's see if that... Alright, so now we have question 1 of 2, which is correct. We only have 2 questions. Alright, so let's go answer that. Alright, so it says you're done. Look, oh, we did do the final page, I'm sorry. But it didn't go to question 2 for some reason. Alright, so let's do a little bit of debugging here. So in the process file, it looks like it's not, this isn't working correctly. If number is equal to total, then redirect, else. So let's do, let's echo out total, make sure that that's correct. Alright, so that's correct, there's 2 total. Now let's echo out number. Number 2. Alright, so I figured out the problem, and it's that this here, this next equal number plus plus, this is changing the value number to 2. So I just want to not do that and just do number plus 1. Okay, and that seems to work. So if we reload, well, I just need to get this out of here. Okay, so we answer question 1, brings us to question 2. We answer question 2, it brings us to the final page. Okay, final score 5, we obviously need to change that. That's just static, just a static number. But everything else looks good. Alright, so let's go to the final. Alright, so instead of just having a 5 here, we want our actual score. And that's really simple to do. All we need to do is start our session and output the session variable. So up here we're going to say session start. Okay, so you want to do this on every page where you want to use the session. Alright, and then down here we're just going to say PHP echo session score. Alright, so let's retake it. We'll get the first one correct, and the second one we'll get wrong. Okay, so that's not right. Oh, actually, we need to include that session start on the question.php file as well. So I'm going to copy that. And we can try this again. Whoop. Okay, so that's correct, that's correct. Final score 1. Okay, it should be 2. Let's go back to the process file. Is set session. Oh, I have 3 S's here. You guys probably saw that a long time ago. Alright, so that should be 2 S's for session. Alright, let's try this again. Reload. Okay, that's correct. That's correct. Alright, so now we're getting final score 2. Stupid mistake. So that's basically it for the front end here. What I want to do in the next video is just create a simple form where we can add questions to our quiz. And that's really it. My goal for this was just to kind of get you familiar with making queries, selecting data from the database, displaying it. Obviously, this isn't the most secure app. We're not really preventing SQL injections and things like that. We're going to get into that later on in later chapters. We're going to take more of a object-oriented approach. So this is basically just like a beginner app. But yeah, in the next video, we'll create a form and we'll be able to add more questions. Alright, so now that our front end is pretty much done, I just want to create a web page, a form where we can add questions obviously with multiple choice answers. So if we open up the add.php file, we have our form. Let's actually go to it in the browser. Alright, so here's our form. Basically, we're going to put in the number for the question, the question text, and then our choices, and then the number of the choice that's correct. Is there a better way to do this? Probably. But I don't want to make it too complicated because we're really early on in this course, and it's just the bare basics that I'm trying to show you. Alright, so what we're going to do, we're going to submit this form to this page. Alright, we're going to submit it to add.php. Alright, so what we want to do is up at the top here, before we output HTML, we want to check for and see if the submit button was pushed. Alright, so if this submit button's pushed, then we want it to do something. Okay, so let's first of all connect our database file, or include it. Alright, now we want to check to see if the submit button was pressed. Alright, so we're going to say if post, actually we'll say if is set post submit. Alright, now this submit is coming from the name of the button down here. Name equals submit. If this was called send, then we'd use post send. Alright. Okay, so let's just do a little test. Say submit was clicked. Alright, so let's reload this and go ahead and push submit, and you can see now it says submit was clicked. So whatever we put in here is only going to run if the form's submitted, which is what we want. So the first thing I'm going to do here is get the post variables. Alright, and I'm going to assign them to regular variables. So question number is going to be post question number. Alright, again, this is coming from the name where it is right here. Alright, now I also want to get this question text. So it's going to basically be the same kind of thing. We're going to change this to text. Alright, now we still have all the choices, and there's a few ways you could do this. Alright, you could take each choice, just like, and assign them to a single variable like we're doing with these. But you may have problems when you go to insert that information in the database, and for instance, choice 5 isn't filled out. Alright, and what I would do, what I'm going to do in this situation is create an array called choices, and I'm going to add each of these to the array, alright, as long as they're filled out. So up here, let's just say choices array. Alright, now to initialize the array, I'm just going to say choices equals array. Okay, so now it's initialized, and I want to pass the choice values that are entered into a slot, into a single slot in the array. Alright, so we'll have the first slot, which will be choices 1, and that's going to equal post choice 1. Okay, so I'm going to do this for all 5. And I'm just going to change the index. Okay, and then we'll change these. So that's going to put all the choices into a nice clean array for us. Alright, so now we have to do the query. Alright, so basically we're going to have two different query. We're going to be inserting data in two different tables, the questions table and then the choices table. Alright, so first we're going to do the question query. Alright, so basically we'll do what we've been doing. We're going to create a variable called query, and in here we're going to say insert into questions. Okay, I'm using those back ticks again. And then we want to put what columns we want to enter these in. Alright, so the first one is question number. Alright, and this is coming from our database. Alright, so our questions database, we're inserting this, the question number, and we also want to insert the text. Okay, so question number and text. And then we want to say values, and then simply put the values in the same order that we put the columns. Alright, and we want to put these in quotes. So question number, which is coming from here, which is coming from our form submission. Okay, and then we want the question text. So we're just saying insert into these two columns these two values. Okay, pretty simple. And now what we're going to do is run it. And I'm going to create a new variable, insert row, MySQLi query, and we're going to pass in the query we just created. Okay, and we can also say or die and let's put the line as well. Okay, so that's going to run the query for us. So down here, basically we want to validate the insert. Okay, so basically we'll just say if insert row. Okay, so if it's successful, then if the questions query is successful, okay, so what we've done already is insert it into this table, into the questions. So we'll get the number and the text. We haven't inserted any choices yet. Okay, that's our next step, is to insert the choices along with these fields, the question number, if it's correct, and the choice text. So we're going to do that now. We're just checking to make sure that the question was inserted. If it is, then we'll go ahead and continue with the choice query. All right, now since our choice values are in an array, we're going to use a for each loop to iterate through that array and create our choice queries. All right, so we're going to use a for each loop. All right, and we're going to say for each choices as, I'm going to say for each choices as choice value. Okay, so the reason I'm using this value is because we want to get the key, which is the choice, which you can see up here. This is the key. It's basically the number of the choice, and then the value, which is going to be whatever the user submits for each choice. We want to be able to use both of those, all right? So let's first of all check and make sure the value is there. Because if, let's say, someone goes to the form and they fill out a question, they fill out choice 1, 2, 3, and 4, we want to make sure that choice 5 doesn't get inserted as a blank, as nothing. All right, so that's why we're going to check for it through each iteration. So we're going to say if the value is not equal to nothing, then we'll proceed. All right, so the next comparison we want to do is to check and see if it's the right answer. Okay, so we'll say if correct choice is equal to the current choice of the current iteration, then we're going to have our variable called isCorrect is going to be, it's going to equal 1. Okay, and then we'll say else isCorrect is going to equal 0. All right, so we know that if it's the right choice and the right iteration, isCorrect is going to equal 1. Okay, so now let's do the choice query. Insert into choices. Actually, this should be a backtick. Insert into choices, and we're basically going to do the same thing. We want the fields, which is going to be question, number, isCorrect, and text, which is going to be the text for the choice. All right, and then down here we're going to say values. Okay, the first value is going to be the question number. Okay, and these should have quotes, single quotes. And next we're going to have that isCorrect. Remember, if it is the right choice, then this is going to be a 1. If not, it's going to be a 0. And then we also want the text, which in this case is going to be the value variable, because we're up here we said for each choices as choice and then value, which is going to be what the user entered into that choice. All right. So now we can run the query. Say insert row. MySQL query. Error. Okay, we just want to make sure we pass in the query. Okay, so now we will validate that insert. So we'll say if insert row. Then all we want to do is continue. Okay, if there's a problem, then we're going to die with an error. Okay, so we'll say error. And I want to just output the error, MySQL error no. Okay. Okay, now when we get out of the loop, which is right here, we just want to redirect. Okay, and we're going to redirect to location, location add.php. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to redirect. I'm just going to set a message variable. We'll say message. We'll say question has been added. And that's all we'll do. And then down here, let's make it, we'll put it right under the heading. So basically we want to say if the if the message variable is set, then we're just going to output that message. Okay, so let's just so we're going to say if is set message, then we're going to echo, put in a paragraph here. Okay, let's put it, all right, yeah, that should be good. So if it's set, if the message is set, then it's going to output here. All right, so let's give that a try. All right, so question number. What I want to do is I want to put the right number. So we have 2 questions in our database. So what I want is for when we come to this page, I want this to be pre-filled with a 3, okay? So that we don't have to guess or we don't have to go and check it. It'll just automatically be there. And that's pretty easy. All we need to do is get a total and add 1 to it. All right, so let's do that before we do anything. Okay, now I'm not going to say if is set. I want to do it out of that block. Okay, so I'm going to break out of that. And let me just paste this in. Basically, we've basically done this before. Okay, so we're just going to get the total, select all from questions, we're going to get the num rows, and then we're going to create a variable called next that's going to be equal to the total plus 1. And then we'll insert that as a value into that input. Okay, so question number, value, okay, we're going to say echo next, and that should be it. So let's save that. Okay, so now it's automatically pre-filled with a 3, and we can change it if we want. We have these nice arrows. Alright, so let's give it a question. Let's see, we'll say what is the best server-side language? We'll say ASP, I don't know, Ruby, PHP. and the correct answer is going to be 3. Submit. Okay, so we're getting an error, undefined variable, correct choice. Let's see, correct choice, which is right here. Oh, we never passed that in. We never created that variable. Okay, so correct choice equals post correct choice, and that's coming from the form, coming from right here. Alright, now let's see if that did anything to our database. Alright, so the questions query went through, alright, the insert, and if we take a look at the choices, alright, so we have an issue with the question number and the is correct. Okay, the question number is 0. Oh, okay. We have just number here, and that's why. Alright. So let's edit this form name. I'm sorry, this input. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's right. Question number. That's the type, not the name. Alright, so name question number, and then up here, question number equals post question number. I'm not sure why it's 0. Let's make sure that it's actually being put into this variable. Okay, so it's 4. We submit it, it gets 4. And it does get inserted into the questions table. Oh, okay. We don't have the $sign here. Well, alright, so that's good. Now for the correct choice, we have that now. We have that, so that should be alright. Alright. So what I'm going to do is just actually delete what we just did from both tables. And we'll just try that again. Okay, correct choice is 3. Submit. And you can see now we have our question has been added. And the questions table looks good, and the choices looks good as well. You can see now we have our question number 3, the correct answer PHP, and then we have the text. So looks good to me. Yeah, so that's it really. So we have our quiz, we have a page to add questions. You can see now we have 3 questions. The estimated time has automatically been changed to 1.5 minutes. Obviously, there's a lot more you can do with this script, but I just kind of wanted it to be, you know, one of the early projects, just to get a feel for database query.